Hello folks, this is another RekStarcraft and I am Rekatan. This is going to be a Zerg versus Terran on Slag Pits. I will be the blue Zerg player Rekatan and my opponent will be the red Terran Cyrain. Let me get this started so that people aren't watching an idle screen for too long. This was a ladder game I had yesterday, and I thought it was kind of cool. My opponent was slightly favored. I believe he was Grandmaster. I should have checked. Either Grandmaster or Very High Master. Generally, if they're slightly favored these days, that means they're a Grandmaster opponent. But I don't think I actually checked, so he might be just a High Master with a good win rate. I thought it was a pretty cool game, so I decided to go ahead and give it a cast. And actually... I just realized a trend. I'm not going to give the spoiler for this game, but I realized a trend in some of my casting lately, so I'm going to have to fix that. Anyways, brain fart. Sorry, I had a day 9 moment. I needed a drink of water. If I sound like death today, it's because allergy season's kicking in Illinois, so I need to pick up some new allergy medication. Because, yeah, I probably sound horrible. Oh well. So the significance of this game is I've been trying to learn the, Lysira style Roach Bane Ling Ling kind of thing where you try to not even worry too terribly much about, at least from what I can tell what he does with it, you try to not even worry too terribly much about having this really, diverse unit composition with making sure you've got some mutas to handle the air and that sort of thing. You just go for ground superiority, and you make sure that you have as many units as you possibly can by the time they arrive to crush the push. And that's just what I can gather from what I see him doing. And Lysira really seems to be one of the best up-and-coming Zergs out there. If there's anyone who has a Zerg versus Terran style that people should emulate, I'd say it's him. Oh, one other side note, since we don't have too terribly much going on yet. I heard through the grapevine, and I kind of knew this was coming for a while now. I had talked to, I had kind of heard from some people from Vile. I'm not going to name names, but heard from some people from Vile that he probably wasn't going to be around for too terribly long, or at the very least was kind of losing interest. But from what I heard, Sai is pretty well spent on StarCraft 2. And that really sucks. He was actually one of the guys who got me first into not even casting, but got me into StarCraft as a whole. I learned a lot of what I know about Zerg from watching StarCraft, so that's kind of a bummer. But my buddy Dave, so shout out to Dave, he actually kind of made a good point. He said there's going to be thousands of Zerg viewers who aren't going to have anywhere to go, and they're going to be looking for something new. So spread the word. I'm going to try to start casting more frequently, and if anyone knows any of those viewers, make sure that they know about this channel, and I'm going to see if I can kind of fill that niche that Sai was filling, at the very least until he comes back. But I definitely don't want to steal his thunder if he does ever actually come back, because he was a great caster, and I actually talked to him quite a bit, especially when I was first starting, and he was very helpful. So, very good guy nonetheless. Okay, so moving on to the game itself. Okay, this was a 13 hatchery, I believe 16 pool, Spanishiwa opening, and I guess I can start calling it Spanishiwa opening instead of Rekatan opening. But I've been looking at this hatch timing, and it's really brilliant. The 13 hatchery as opposed to a 15 hatchery or 14 hatchery is incredibly good. I've been finding... Ooh, this frame rate is really low. What is this? I just noticed that. I apologize for the low frame rate. I'll fix it next time. 25 is not going to cut it. Probably something running in the background. But anyways, the 13 hatchery is actually fairly cool. I never quite realized it when I was trying gasless expands, way back when I just, started thinking about it. But the 13 hatch is really good because, let's say they go for, some cannon play. Well, then you pull your drones. You have to, pull like 8 to 10 drones to block all the potential cannon locations. And then, your hatch finishes pretty quickly afterwards. So you're not dancing with that, with those cannons for too terribly long before the hatch pops, puts up creep, and gives you a nice spot to just start mining from with your pull. So that is pretty cool. Alright, so we see some Hellion harass coming in. It's 2 Hellions. And really, when you have a situation like this where it's 2 Hellions running by 1 spine, your opponent is going to generally just want to turn around, because as you saw, only one spine got through, and actually my queens were a bit out of position, otherwise even 0 Hellions would have gotten through. But no irreparable damage done. He absolutely needs to kill these drones. They're just going to regen, and no big deal. So I'm seeing a, what is it, a shadow ops? I don't know. I want to call it a nuclear silo, but you know. And so I'm canceling one of my spores, and I think I forget to cancel. Okay, these were just blind made. Whenever I see Hellions, I like to just blindly make some spores, just to be safe. Better safe than sorry. Just because a Banshee follow-up is so common, and if it's not a Banshee follow-up, then it's oftentimes a medevac drop follow-up, and spores still help with that as well. So that's what that was for. This frame rate is so distracting. Oh, I'm such a perfectionist. So that's why I've got these spores sitting here, even though I saw ghosts and Hellions. A little goofy, but it's just kind of, you know, one of those paranoia things I like to do. And this is actually kind of grim. I could have blocked that off a little better. Notice I'm not pulling drones, though. Believe it or not, this is the right choice for me. It wasn't in this case because I had a good surround, but generally, I don't like to pull drones against Hellions. It's just, it's not going to pay off. There's some tricky timing for it if you want to pull your drones, but in a situation like that where I was caught a bit off guard by it, generally pulling drones is just going to make them all line up for a nice shot, and I would have none of those left. So don't be afraid to just leave your drones there and focus on killing the Hellions as quickly as possible, especially if they catch you off guard. Now, if you see them coming a long way in advance, then sure, go ahead and pull the drones, and just make sure you time it so that right as they're wrapping around, your drones are going up the ramp, so you can just kind of laugh. But if it's an emergency situation where they're already firing on your drones, pulling them is not going to help. And I'm starting to work on these rocks, and this is just kind of some future thought on my part. On slag pits, yes, I'm playing slag pits. I'll get into that here when I've got some time. I like to break these rocks very early in these positions, since this third is actually fairly difficult to hold. And I'm assuming my Terran opponent is going to be taking the gold, so I actually want to be one base up a lot quicker than I normally would be. So really, if I wasn't worried about some sort of grand push, because I have played against this player before, he likes to hit with a Ghost Siege Tank push. And so I was worried about that, especially because I hadn't seen it expand. I had seen this in-base orbital, so I knew he was going to expand sooner or later, but for all I know, that's just him going 3OC, which can be very, very different. 3OC actually can push much more aggressively than an expansion build, because they don't have to worry about any defenses, no bunkers necessary, any of that. So you would think, okay, well, why would 3OC actually be able to be more aggressive? It's just because they have the high ground wall, so they don't have to worry in the slightest about their own defense. So, continuing to break these rocks. Oh, and why am I playing Slag? Well, I've actually found that Slag is a much better map for my playstyle than Typhon Peaks. Typhon is just very uncomfortable for the style of play I have, where, especially Zerg versus Protoss, where I like to get a very aggressive... Oh, sorry, I need to have this tab up. Where I like to have a very aggressive early game, and where there's that little awkward mid-game time when I'm transitioning from ground-based banelings to baneling drops. Unfortunately, Typhon Peaks, the timings just don't quite work out for that, and so I'm finding slag pits to be very friendly. They 4-gate every time, and I beat the 4-gate, so that's nice. In fact, I might actually cast one of those 4-gates. If anyone's interested, if they're still baffled as to how to beat a 4-gate on slag pits. I had one yesterday where it was pretty decisive, and he didn't GG out, so that was kind of fun. I always love it when people try to cheese you, and then they don't even bother to GG. So at this point, actually the biggest thing I'm wondering about is saturation. Yeah, and this is not uncommon for me. I'm finding more and more and more I'm undersaturating, and I'm feeling okay with it. I really, really am. Optimal mining is 16 drones on a mineral line. Max mining is 30 drones on a mineral line. And here we see some Hellions. But yeah, I'm finding that more and more, it's not such a big deal to be on 46 drones over 2 bases. It's not really at all. It means you've got such a nice standing army. Okay, and here's something that happens here that is just a big whoops on my part. I'm trying to cut him off from escape, but in fact he's checking to see if I took a 4th. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll cut off with the queens here, but I forget to make the wall. And this is bad. That queen right over there would have stopped this. This is not bad, but it could have gone much better. You know, lose what, 4 or 5 drones and probably about 10, 15 speedlings. That's a lot of losses for Hellions that I saw a full minute ago. So yeah, make sure that you've got all your, I's dotted and T's crossed in those situations where you're trying to set up a good flank, because really what could have happened is queen wall, roaches come in, and the Hellions are stuck and just get shot up by the roaches. If they manage to run by the roaches, then I've got the speedlings ready. That's what it should have looked like, but not the case. Nevertheless, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm still... I think it's been a while since I poked around at his natural. I think I'm basically assuming that he is expanding. And that's really bad on my part, but nevertheless, 3OC typically doesn't start, with so gas heavy, so I suppose there was some logic there. The creep spread here is very, very important, and that's something that pretty much everyone should take note of. More Hellions, more Hellions. Cyrain is really liking this Hellion harass, and it's working out reasonably well, but not as well as he would hope, I'm sure. And that one did not work out too terribly well at all. The Banelings actually were not quite economical because he got a little bit of a spread there at the end just before they hit. But this is just because I have the Banelings and Speedlings in the same control group. I don't worry too terribly much about splitting into 3 control groups at this stage when I'm doing this Roach, Speedling, Baneling. And in fact, once I start using Infestors, I'll sometimes even switch over to 1 control group for the Roach, Speedling, Baneling, and then 1 control group for the Infestors. I've actually been finding that the more simple you can keep your control groups, the better off you are for managing other things and the less mistakes you're going to make. From watching a lot of the pros, I mean, some of the pros are running around with 1 control group with Hydras, Roaches, Lings, and Banelings in them. So, at that point, you really got to wonder if it's beneficial to have 4 different control groups based on unit type. Maybe they're onto something, and simplicity is where it's at. So notice the biggest thing here is the creep spread, both denying expansions and also providing me quite a bit of defensibility. This push I see well in advance, and he's got a lot of time here to scan and kill, and that's buying me time to prepare my positioning. So notice my roaches are in a flanking position, my speedling banelings are in the front. This is actually, it's debatable as to which you would prefer. I personally like this because I'm going to force the Hellions to retreat back into the roaches, or just outright kill them. And I'm going to hit the Marines and Ghosts in this situation. So, in this situation in particular, since there's Marines and Ghosts, yes, absolutely, Speedling Baneling in front. And we see the flank now executed, and he does not micro back. And in fact, he could have had those Hellions back, and maybe had a little bit more going for him. We got the Roach Rally, and that's going to clean up pretty easily. And this is kind of falling back to the passive Zerg versus Terran that I was talking about a few casts back. This is just kind of what I'm doing these days. It's working out really well. So we see I'm going ahead and pushing for a quick counterattack, but we're going to see something kind of interesting here, and this is something I've been teaching myself to do. Kind of showing myself a bit of restraint here. And now I have idle units. Okay. So, Ghost in the bunker. I'm going to go ahead and pick up the engineering bay. No big deal. It wasn't exactly researching anything, but oh well. And so at this point, I'm going to turn around here soon, believe it or not. Why? Well, I guess, okay. It's hard for me to describe here, but I'll try. How many times have you had a situation, and let me pause for a second. How many times have you had a situation where you see something that looks killable, what is this? 23 roaches versus 2 Thors and a few Hellions. Looks pretty easy to do, right? How many times versus a Terran opponent do you say, okay, I can kill that? You attack in and boom, 2 siege tanks happen to be in their main firing away, and that tilts everything into their favor. And I've found that more and more there's nothing wrong with just going up, poking at their base a bit, sniping some units, sniping a building or 2, making them pull SCVs, and then turning around and heading home. And yes, let's go to everything, chat. With a good rally, I could pull these, With a good rally, yes, I could have killed this. And especially back when I was at his base when these 2 Thors weren't up yet. It was just 2 rather than 4. I maybe wouldn't have outright killed him, but I would have set him back so much that it would have been a very easy win. So, would it have been my best choice to go ahead and attack? Yes. But given that I didn't have an Overlord flying overhead, getting a perfect idea of what everything was, which may be something I can do to improve in the future, it was not worth the risk, because 1 or 2 volleys of siege tank fire all of a sudden turned that counterattack into a serious loss. So, also there's SCV repair to take into account, which is a completely whole different story. Okay, I'm going to get this started, since this is a longish game. So that is why I turn around there, and it's a willpower thing that I'm trying to force myself to do, because I'm such an aggressive player, and I found that I definitely fall in the category of being the player who shoots himself in the foot with his aggression sometimes. So I'm trying to learn when to turn around, and maybe this was a case where I turned around too soon, but I'd rather turn around too soon than not soon enough, especially when I'm on now 4 base to 2 base, feeling pretty comfortable. But notice my drone count, only 57 drones. You're probably never going to see me go above 60 drones anymore these days. As much as I love Fruit Dealer, I think there's something not quite right about going up to 80 supply worth of drones. It's just you're pushing yourself way too high on that, and you're counting on the remax. And if they get too close to your production facilities, you're not going to have that remax to work with. So I really like to save that for army strength. But although there is the spore trick, I might actually do it. Well, I'll just tell you what it is. It's nothing that needs a demonstration. Hellions roaming, they're not going to see anything. The spore trick is, if, let's say you're supply capped at 200, and you've got 60 drones mining, you take all those 60 drones, and you make 60 spore crawlers. And then you make 60 supply worth of units. Then you cancel 60 spore crawlers. And then you go back to mining. And congratulations, you now have a 260 out of 200 supply. So that is a fun little trick if anyone is supply capped with a lot of resources floating and their opponent is showing no signs of aggression. Well, you just go ahead and spore trick, and now you have 200 supply worth of army. Pretty cool. So, oh, I remember this. Okay. What not to do with your infestors. Get ready. Get ready. Oh, 1 hellion. Oh, no hellions. Oh, there we go. I got 4. That's better than no hellions and 1 hellion. And, alright, so I get the surround on those rogue hellions, and I get this fun. Okay. What was going on there? Well, that's exactly what I was talking about. Look at my control groups here. 1 on roaches, 2 on banelings and speedlings, 3 on infestors. And you'll see that I actually correct this here in a second, and I go, let's just put infestors on the roach control group. They move about the same speed. Actually, well, let's see. Okay, 3.25. Huh. Almost the same speed. Almost the same speed. Okay, now it's looking a little better now that I've got them roaming around with them. So, really, it's just me getting my control groups a little mixed up. I was trying to flank with the speedling, baneling, or cut off, escape route with the speedling, baneling, push them into the infestors with the roaches, all this and that cool stuff. But 3 control groups just sometimes feels like a bit much. And for a long time, I felt like it was almost like a matter of pride. Like, no, I won't ever be a good player unless I use 3 control groups of units at least. Hopefully 5 to 7. But, no, don't ever use 5 to 7. But after watching so many pros using 1 to 2 control groups, I got to break down and suck up the pride and say, you know what, maybe they're onto it. So, don't be surprised if you see this more and more, which unfortunately means attack moving infestors, which is so bad. But, that's okay. So at this point, what am I thinking? Well, I'm thinking don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't make a 20 drone production cycle next time you lose some roaches or something. And I'm just stacking up larvae, because since I have a very roach-heavy army, I expect to need to remax. And you're going to see that I actually make a critical mistake that could lose me the game. Well, not very likely given this situation, but still. Okay, so I knew this push was coming. He had just way too much time on 2 base. He has no choice but to just pull SCVs and give it one last hurrah. And holy god, that's a lot of Thors. That is 15 Thors. But that's what the infestors with neural parasite are for. But we'll see this, newfound 2 control group action maybe bite me in the ass a little bit. All right, I get a fungal op. Not too bad. He misses a CNP. Not too bad as well. But SCV's got to be Thors and repair. Get a pretty good bust there with the opening. But, oh, 2 infestors in front. No bueno. Get a couple neuroparasites off. He cast a fungal, so he doesn't have enough, so I'm sitting there trying to make a fungal over and over, or a neuroparasite over and over and over. He just attacked those into death. And at this point, it's looking pretty good, but had I engaged... Pause for a second. Got, what, 4 Thors and Marine left. And, you know, another Thor on the way. It's not too bad because I've got 34 roaches producing, and that's what you need to be ready to do when you're going roach. It's all about the remax. But imagine had I engaged here. Yeah, around here. You know, maybe roaches down here, banelings up here, infestors over. I don't know. No, roaches and infestor would be together because they're the same control group. But you know what I'm saying. If I engage up here, then he's got to come all the way down here after killing everything with these, you know, slow-ass Thors before he can actually go ahead and start cutting off my reinforcement route. Which means by the time he arrives down here, we've got another 100 to 120 supply of roaches waiting for him, instead of him already standing in the rally point, which is not where you want to be because that's going to split your forces. So that was a whoops on my part. You always want to engage very early when you've got a supply inefficient army such as roaches. Alright, so I'll get back to the rest of the replay. And a little burrow micro because he used so many scans after he realized I had burrow move. He just kind of was scan happy, both killing creep and making sure I didn't burrow in. And Cyrain says GG, or in a sec, LOL, okay, there we go, GG. This is something I used to do all the time. I didn't quite do it that blatantly, but the GG, but let's keep playing a bit just to see if I can win while he's, you know, distracted. And that wasn't necessarily my intent when I did it. It was more like, I'm frustrated, let's type GG out of rage, and then keep playing. I came to realize from a lot of people raging at me for it if I did win, or even if I didn't win, it's kind of bad manners. And I don't usually try to go manner police, but at a silver level, gold level, I don't think anyone really cares. But at a master or a diamond level, when you say GG, a lot of these guys are like, oh, finally. I can take my hands off the keyboard and mouse. I've been, you know, spamming 300 APM for the last 30 minutes. I'm freaking tired. And so it's not too good to say GG and then not leave. And in fact, some tournaments, if you were to do that, it would immediately lose you that game. If not give you a warning or potentially a disqualification if you did it regularly. But nevertheless, just something to keep in the back of your head. Excuse me. Just something to keep in the back of your head. You know, it's like I said, if you're gold or silver, I don't think anyone cares. But by the time you get to diamond and master, it's just a courtesy to leave after you say GG. But to each their own. So I hope this was a good replay for everyone to watch. Notice drone count, 54 drones. I'm on 4 bases with 54 drones. And this is not a bad deal. It really isn't. I was able to keep a very, very potent roach army. And roaches typically aren't too terribly potent at 200 supply. They're just too supply inefficient. But because I had 26 to 36 less drones than the average endgame Zerg, that's a lot more roaches. You know, that's 10 to 15 more roaches, and that makes a pretty big deal. So, I hope this, you know, gives kind of another look as to why I like to stay so drone light, and at the same time helps kind of underscore the passive ZVT play that seems to be working so well for me as I continue to overhaul my ZVT. My ZVT is going through even more changes than my ZVP. Notice I did not make a Mutalisk, didn't even make a Spire, I don't think. And this is becoming more and more common, but I'll do a whole nother cast as to why I'm not liking mutas anymore. Alright guys, thanks for watching.